Welcome to the Find My Catalyst podcast. We all have problems we're looking to solve, and we know that there are solutions out there, but we struggle with this. Well, how do we find the solution? Where does that nudge come from to help us take the next step and start solving tough problems? Well, that's the intention of this podcast, is to help you find your catalyst and take that next step. I'm Mike Simmons. I'm the founder of Catalyst Sale. I am excited to have Lee Salz join me on the podcast today. He is the best-selling author of Sell Different and Sales Differentiation at Higher Right, Higher Profits. He's a keynote speaker and a sales management strategist. The conversation today is absolutely awesome if you want to get down to the brass tacks of how we all can get better at accelerating the path to helping solve our customers' problems, which is ultimately what sales is from my perspective. This episode is brought to you by the Catalyst Sale Game Plan, our approach to goal setting and execution. Head to catalystsale.com/game for more information. Let's get to the discussion. Lee, it is great to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing awesome, Mike. It's an honor to be on.
Awesome. We were chatting just before we started to hit record, which is what I'll usually do with guests. You had an interesting way that you wanted to start things. I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to you and say, how did you want to start the conversation today?
Yeah, Mike, I'm concerned.
You're concerned.
There's an epidemic in the sales profession, and I don't know how to fix it. It's awful. And I went on your
sounds
website.
Dangerous and scary. What's going on?
It is. The epidemic is there is so much wasted time in sales, chasing deals that never, ever going to happen.
Yes.
And it was interesting. I was looking on your website and your process and stage 2 qualifying.
Yeah.
And, I'm very passionate about discovery. I get these calls all the time from executives saying, hey, we got a closing problem. And we'll talk about that. And they'll say, well, my salespeople, they tell me about these deals. It's imminent. We're going to get it. And then all of a sudden, if we don't drop our price, we're losing the deal to a competitor. Or, you know what, we're going to put this off for 6 months. Or they ghost us. Ghosting is the today expression of they don't talk to us anymore.
Right.
So we got a closing problem. And I listen to this and empathetically I respond and correct them. So it doesn't sound like you have a closing problem at all. And they'll say, Lee, what do you mean? I just told you all of these issues. I said, yes, those are symptoms of your real problem. They go quiet. Well, what's my real problem? It's discovery. Salespeople don't appreciate that initial phase of the process enough. That discovery phase, that's where the magic happens, right? Part of discovery is we got to qualify. Part of it is that's where we're positioning our meaningful differentiators. That's where we acquire key information that energizes the deal. And I use a metaphor of a house, right? If the foundation of a house is weak, the structure collapses.
Yep.
If the foundation of your deal, which is discovery, is weak, so is your deal. If discovery is weak, the deal is weak. Sorry about that. That's my crack security team when the garbage man stops by. Let me.
It is good. It is good to have security around the house.
It is.
House.
My apologies, Mike.
No. So Lee, you're tugging at my heart. If I could, I'm not a hugger, but if I could hug you, I'd come over there and I'd hug you, because this is one of those things that drives me absolutely insane. And I've got a question for you around it.
Okay.
In the context of closing problem, all around this discussion around discovery.
Yeah.
Why is it that we as sales professionals or leaders of sales teams struggle with helping our members of our team understand that first problem is not really the problem? We can go deeper. There's likely something behind it that is driving it, is influencing it, is creating it. Why do we latch on almost like Tommy Boy with his little roll and he's, I've got a live one and I'm going to take care of it. And we want to hold on to that problem that we're first here because we know we can solve it and we just don't go deeper. Why do we struggle with this?
I have that conversation all the time with salespeople, and I use a way to describe questions as horizontal and vertical.
Okay,
so
cool.
Horizontal questions are the surface level questions that give you a data point.
Yep.
Vertical questions are the ones you have this data point and getting a complete picture around that data point. So the horizontal questions give you the what, vertical gives you the why.
Awesome.
And we don't ask enough vertical questions. And I tell salespeople it's not their fault. How many people tell salespeople it's not their fault for anything? Everything's their fault. It's not. You know, Mike, you know whose fault it is?
Whose fault is it?
Parents. It's their parents' fault. See, Mike, we all come into this world naturally inquisitive. Why is the sky blue? Why is this so big? Why is this so round? And what do our parents do? It just is. No more questions.
Right.
So we've been conditioned from a very young age, asking questions irritates people. It's invasive. They don't want to answer questions. So we've been conditioned not to ask enough questions. But here's the problem. Study after study reveals the secret to sales success is asking thoughtful, insightful questions. If we're not asking enough questions, we're not well positioned to get the deal.
And I think you highlighted a really important piece there. You said two words, thoughtful and insightful.
Yes.
Thoughtful and insightful. You cannot ask thoughtful or insightful questions if you don't, A, understand your customer, B, understand the problems that are looking to be solved, or C, understand how people have solved it. You have to have this background in order to do it. Yet we focus so much on another thing, just kind of pet peeve. You're getting me amped up at it's 7:11 in the morning out here in Arizona. So I've had a couple of coffees, but we push out scripts, or we push out these specific fields that you have to have answered inside the CRM. And and in addition to parents conditioning kids to say, not ask why 800 times, as every 2-year-old will do. And whether you have kids of your own or you have nieces and nephews, you know that this happens. We've conditioned people to, one, not ask questions, two, not really even think or be thoughtful about why they're asking the type of question, or have some curiosity to dive deeper into it. Lee, this is absolutely an endemic that is frustrating. How do we fix it?
Well, let's take it a step further.
Yeah.
We've told salespeople, the sales management profession, your job when you go on a sales call, that discovery call, is to find pain. So we ask one of these surface level questions, right? A horizontal question.
Yep.
And we find a pain point. We write it down. We ask another one. Give us another pain point. We write it down.
Yep.
And we start to salivate because they got all this pain and we know we can fix it, but the deal never happens.
Right.
Do you know why, Mike?
There are so many reasons why the deal never happens.
But they had pain.
So yeah, go a bit of it. So say that again. So they had, because my head went with, holy crap, we had the surface level pieces of information. We think we've heard some things. We didn't really hear those things.
Right.
The client doesn't remember the conversation that we've had. Right?
Oh, that's so a whole separate conversation.
All that kind of stuff. But let's focus on the pain. The pain. So there's pain, but
here's what salespeople don't do. They don't go to that next level.
Yep.
Is the pain they just heard about an inconvenience or a problem?
Awesome distinction. What is the difference between an inconvenience and a problem?
An inconvenience is a nuisance. We all have them. We talk about them. We complain about it. Anybody that will listen will complain about it.
Yes, we will.
We don't do a darn thing about it until it escalates to the level of a problem. Once it becomes a problem, we're willing to invest time, resources, and dollars to address it. And we like to use that word solution. You don't say an inconvenience and a solution. There's a problem and a solution. Right. I'll give you a great example. You heard my puppy Kona barking a little bit ago. So she's a COVID puppy. She actually has her birthday tomorrow. She'll be 2.
Awesome.
Yeah. And she's a sweet thing. Mike, I wake up every morning. She goes up to the top of my bed, on top of my pillow, and lays down on top of my head, starts kissing my nose, saying it's time for a belly scratch. That's how I start every morning, Mike.
Hey, she's got, did you say he or she? She has you conditioned.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But you heard her go to the window and bark, right? So she went in my dining room. I have 3 big windows in my dining room, these wood blinds. And about 6 months ago, we didn't open the blinds enough for her to see. So she went in and she saw something and she started clawing at the blinds, completely destroyed one of them.
Yep.
So now, Mike, in my dining room, I have a set of blinds, and a sheet covering the window.
Ouch.
Because those blinds were completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And Sharon's my wife.
So you've gone 6 months. You've gone 6 months with a sheet covering the window.
Absolutely. And you know why, Mike? There's COVID. Nobody's coming to visit. So my wife and I, every week, we gotta go get some new blinds. We got to do something about this. Every week we talk about it. We complain about what an eyesore it is. Haven't done a darn thing about it. But I will guarantee you this, Mike. When my parents come to visit or my in-laws come to visit, there will not be a sheet on that window. It will have gone from an inconvenience to a problem.
I think so. There's something here that I think we need to highlight for folks that is super important, because it's not necessarily the specific detail that we're talking about, but one of the words that drives me absolutely insane is urgency. And the reason urgency drives me insane is because leaders of sales teams or leaders of organizations believe that we can create a sense of urgency for our customers. Now, I could ask you 10 questions about how you feel every time you look at that sheet and, whatever. And
I shake my head and roll my eyes.
And that's it. And then, but the thing that's creating the urgency is
family coming to visit.
That's it.
Until that happens, there'll probably be a sheet on that window.
It's absolutely
nobody's coming. My kids are in college. My daughter graduated college. She's got her own place. Nobody's coming to visit. How often do I go in the dining room? Rarely, because we eat in the kitchen. It's just when we happen to walk past, we got to do something about that. There's no reason to do something right now other than it's an eyesore. So I'll talk about it here. I'll complain about it. My wife and I will complain about it. She'll come to me and say, Lee, we really got to go deal with it. We haven't even gone on a website to look at options. We've done nothing. So let me take it a step further, Mike. Here's another seller issue. We would love to talk to the C-suite. Oftentimes, we don't get that opportunity right off the bat. We deal with mid-level management. And I do these deal strategy sessions with clients all the time. And a lot of times they're dealing with these mid-level managers, and they'll share with me these pain points. And I'll say, okay, are those problems or inconveniences? And we'll go through and we'll identify those as problems. And I'll say, great. Does the executive team see those issues through the same lens? Do they see them as an inconvenience or as a problem? And when you get to that level with a client, with a prospect, you can actually ask that mid-level manager who's so passionate that we've got to do something about this now. And ask them that question, because the mid-level manager doesn't control the purse strings, right? Somebody north on the org chart does. And let's say it's the CFO. Does your CFO see it through the same lens? Do they see this as a problem or as an inconvenience? And you know what the most common answer is, Mike?
I'm sure I don't know.
First, it's silence. Okay. I hadn't thought about it.
All right,
and then the second one is, I don't know.
Yep.
And if you're a salesperson listening to this and you've been in that situation, I hope you're seeing red flags, right? Flashing red lights. Your deal is in trouble, because if that mid-level manager doesn't have a clue with the person who controls the purse strings, how they view this situation, the likelihood of your deal having legs, not very good. And we've got to have that. We don't have that conversation. We make an assumption. Mid-level manager sees it this way. The folks north on the org chart see it the same way. And then they say to us, yeah, it's just a rubber stamp. I just got to go tell my boss and they'll sign off on it. Let me tell you something. There's no such thing as a rubber stamp in sales. Doesn't exist. If I've got to sign it, trust me, I need to understand it, because as soon as my ink hits the paper, I own it. I've got responsibility. And if you haven't had a conversation with me around this, and I'll give you a great example. I have this client, they sell outsourced call center and help desk. And a lot of times there are these mid-tier managers, and they'll talk about hold times and wait times for users to get help. It's 10 minutes, and it's an irritant to them. They're frustrated by it. To them, it's unacceptable. But you see, to outsource it and have a greater level of support means writing a big check. So when I ask the question about north on the org chart, how they see this, if you can't articulate this in the way that they understand, which is dollars and cents, this deal is going nowhere. Saying, wow, they're having to wait 10 minutes. Okay, they're not really waiting 10 minutes. They're doing other things. They're on their email. They're not sitting there on the phone going, wow, what should I do now? They're doing other things. So you can't tell me it's a complete loss of productivity. So what's the conversation with the executive team around this? And we have to guide and help that conversation to happen, because another mistake we make in sales is we think that people we're dealing with can sell internally.
Right.
They're not salespeople. That's our job. If they really want our solution, we have to coach them through the process and help them have the right conversations that need to take place with that executive team.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, you got me going now.
Yeah, it's good. That's good. It's good to have exciting conversations in the morning, whether they're about sheets. So it was good that you provided the extra context relative to the dining room, because I missed that at first. So again, highlight this. There are things that are said, there are things that are heard, and there are things that are remembered. I missed that the blinds were in the dining room in an area that you wouldn't see. What I envisioned was every day I'm walking by, like that thing would be taken care of tomorrow, just because it would drive me absolutely nuts. And I don't feel comfortable with that level of pain associated. It's not an inconvenience for me. It's painful. And use that to reinforce that people's perception of pain and inconvenience shift depending on where they are inside the organization, what their priorities are, and what level of influence is happening. So one of the things that also jumps out at me, Lee, as we're talking about this is, this idea of, okay, we've got ourselves so focused on a single problem. We just want to lean on that. And that becomes, hey, we've identified the problem. Now we know that we've got solution fit, and we didn't go any deeper. The other thing that we tend to cling to are people. So we've got an advocate inside the business. They make us feel really safe and comfortable, because every time we call them, they answer the phone and
they're friendly. They're nice.
Yeah, they're nice. So we have good conversations, but they don't have any juice, and they can't get something done because they don't want to admit that they don't have influence. They don't want to admit that they don't know. They like the conversations too. They actually like the power of being able to have a conversation with someone who values them, because maybe they're not valued inside their organization. How do we help our teams get more comfortable expanding their circle of influence and networking inside businesses?
And Mike, I'll share it with you this way. My all-time favorite TV show is Law and Order. The original. When
you talk about it in the book, because you talk about the mystery, cracking them beforehand. There was another one you said. You talked about, there was something else that you did.
Encyclopedia Brown, the kitty book. Yeah, awesome. Love that too. But you know what the best part of the Super Bowl was?
What's that?
They announced during the Super Bowl, the original Law and Order is coming back, and it's on tonight. The first episode tonight of the news, and they brought back a lot of the same characters.
Yep.
And what I love so much about the kids' book, Encyclopedia Brown and Law and Order, I love trying to solve mysteries. And that's the way I always looked at sales, is trying to solve a mystery. And the way I look at the individuals I encounter along the way is a concept I call a mentor. You may have heard the expression, or use the expression, a coach, an internal coach.
Sure.
I always felt that was too vague.
Okay.
So as I meet individuals, so take that person that you were describing, really friendly, but doesn't have the juice. I look at each person through two lenses: level of commitment and level of influence.
Okay.
Level of commitment to our solution being the one that's adopted. So not to do something, but my solution specifically. Level of influence is their ability to make it happen inside the organization. So there's 2 0 to 5 scales that I use. And again, when I do deal strategy sessions and they're telling me about a deal and the folks that they're dealing with, I'll ask them, tell me what their 0 to 5 score is for level of commitment and level of influence. Any score less than a 5 in either side tells me the deal has vulnerabilities.
Good. Yep.
If you're giving me a perfect score, I'll challenge you on that too, to say, so wait a minute. What you're saying is, if the competition offered a price 15% lower, they'd still be in your camp, and they have the pen in their hand ready to sign the contract. So why are we even talking about it? Because if they were a 5 and a 5, the deal's done.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So anything less than that, and that's not necessarily bad news. Now that you see there's vulnerabilities, you have the opportunity to do something about it.
That's it. Yep. If you know something, you can do something, right?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So we talk about level of commitment. There are people inside the organization that will never be excited about your solution. Given their role and responsibilities, they're never going to rise to the occasion and say, I got to have this now. They'll never get there. And on the level of influence side, there are people that are wonderfully friendly people, and they will tell you chapter and verse of everything going inside the company. And they will share with you issues, ones that they perceive as problems, and don't have the ability to do anything about it. I'll give you an example of my world.
Yeah.
I get regional managers that reach out to me and want to talk about sales compensation changes.
Yep.
Regional managers usually don't own sales compensation.
Right.
They don't like the plan. They think it's flawed, but they don't have the ability to contract with someone like me to fix it.
Right.
And so having that conversation with them, now, if they've been given a mandate and someone north on the org chart said, hey, go find someone to help us, that's different. But if they've just said, you know what, I don't like this plan. And what they can do so easily is suck up all of our time. And see, if we don't evaluate that level of influence side and you recognize based on the circumstance, they have very little influence to make this happen, they can be a huge time suck. And you'll spend hours and hours and hours with someone that doesn't have the juice, to use your expression, to make the deal happen. And I'll tell you what, it doesn't matter sales and business in general.
Yeah.
The most successful people look at every minute as an investment. So you invest minutes where you have the greatest likelihood of being successful.
Yep.
And if you don't look at through those lenses, level of commitment, level of influence, there's always going to be a likelihood that you're wasting minutes chasing deals that are never going to happen. I'll tell you another thing that causes this epidemic that we started with is salespeople don't have a target client profile.
So I think that was awesome because I usually will look at it in the context of ideal customer profile. And I'll say ideal customer profile, both from the context of organizations, type of companies, and roles, type of people inside those organizations. And they ideally should come together.
Right.
I really like the use of the word target customer profile because it starts to shift something. So go a bit into kind of what informed your thinking around that, why you go in that direction.
And it's not wordplay. It's not that I just like the word target better than ideal.
Yep.
I think there's two completely different messages. When I hear ideal client profile,
right,
what I hear is if all the stars were to align, this is the kind of business we'd love to have. It's like a lottery ticket. It's a 1 in a billion chance.
Okay. Yep.
A target client says, this is who will perceive meaningful value in what we offer.
Yep.
And every sales minute of every day should be invested in the pursuit of those opportunities. And I actually have a worksheet on that. Mike, does your audience like free things?
I'm sure, but a lot of people like free things, and we're happy to. Where can people go to get the worksheet?
All right, it's a very complicated website, so I'm going to say it slow. targetclientprofile.com.
Perfect.
If you go there, you can download a worksheet, and there's 9 components that will give you laser focus on who will perceive meaningful value in what you offer. We spend way too much time chasing deals that are never going to happen. So, for example, we get to the finish line as price is an issue. I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations when they describe the challenges that this organization was having relative to the price point. They would never perceive enough meaningful value to buy.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at price and value on two sides of a scale, whenever the price issue comes up, what they're saying is, we don't perceive enough meaningful value to support the price that you put in front of us. It's constructive criticism. That's all it is. We like to say it's an objection. It's not an objection. It's a set of constructive criticism. And there are those out there that don't fit your target client profile that we had no business getting to the finish line. We should have walked away at the starting line if we had qualified properly. Part of qualification is qualifying against your target client profile. Is there a potential fit here?
Right.
If they will never perceive meaningful value, let's go find someone else.
Absolutely. And I've seen all the different types of reps. I've seen reps who will look at the qualification process or the series, and there's so many different checklists relative to qualification. I mean, from our standpoint, it's a who, what, why, where, when, how kind of model. So, but there are a number of different things that are out there that talk about this. One of the challenges I've seen historically is that you find reps who will qualify everything in because they're super optimistic and they think that there's always a chance. And then you also find someone on the complete opposite side of the spectrum where they're searching for the reason to qualify somebody out and move on to the next because they've either read something that says every no leads you to the next, whatever the heck it is. But why do people fall into both of it from your perspective, your experience? Why do people fall into either one of those camps? And
so if you think of what we just talked about, the target client profile, the 2 examples you gave were the optimist and the pessimist.
Yeah.
I'm the pragmatist. I've got a target client profile over here that says, this is what I should be looking for. Does this match or not? This is pragmatic. And there's no emotion involved in this. is there a match or not? Or what's the strength of the match or lack thereof?
Yep.
So the lesser the match, the less I should be interested in pursuing that opportunity because it's nothing but a mirage.
Yeah. It's powerful. It's powerful when you talk about this a bit in the book about how often people, you will hear the point that, people make decisions based on emotion and then justify them with logic. Yes. And in the process where we have this opportunity to discover, to learn, and that's what it is. It's learn. Like we're learning, and people like to learn with each other. If you go back and think about anything new that you've tried, yes, it's going to be hard at first, but you're going to learn together. And if you've got a group of people, it becomes even more exciting because you're learning to do this new thing. Some people learn to cook together. Some people learn to paint together.
Right.
Yet when we get in front of a customer, we now get away from learning to saying, no, actually what we want to do is fill out the answers to the test. And you're the Mad Lib person on the other end. So now I just have to fill in all these boxes. It's fascinating stuff.
It's like Mad Libs, right? You just come in and you have these blanks and you just fill in the blanks and then you read the narrative to see how it looks.
And it's perfect because then everybody starts to look the same. And then before you know it, you realize that, wow, you've not been able to differentiate yourself from somebody else in the other part of their process because they're actually providing more value.
I have a question for you. Maybe you can help me with this because I want to come back to the first thing you said.
Yeah.
One of the most accepted premises in sales is that people buy based on emotion and justify their decision with logic.
Okay. So why is that deceptive?
No. That's not my question.
Okay.
I'm with you on that.
All right.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000,000%.
Awesome.
My question for you is this.
Yeah.
Why is it that when salespeople get into discovery, they've all heard that expression,
right?
They forget all about the emotional side and the entire conversation is logic-based. Can you tell me why that is? Because I haven't figured out the answer.
It's because there's so many different books out there that talk about the importance of the pitch. Mm-hmm. And here are all of the things that should be incorporated into your pitch. And this is how you should say, what you should say, and when you should say. And you've got to be able to demonstrate whatever. Like so we get conditioned by a book or someone who's speaking who says, this is what you need to do. And instead, we forget to ask questions and listen and hear from the perspective of the person on the other end why they care about something. Like I was really fortunate. I had a chance to speak in front of facilitate a discussion in front of a bunch of kids at the local high school on Friday last week. And this is just going to continue to date the podcast. But in the conversation, we talked about a number of different brands. And the exercise I asked the kids to do is identify a brand that you're really excited about and interested in. The follow-up question was, what problem do they solve? Then the follow-up question was, who cares about that problem or who do they solve it for? And then the follow-up was, why is it important to solve? And across the board, the most popular brands were ones like Nike, a lot of the companies that you saw in the Super Bowl commercials, right? So Nike's out there, Tesla was out there, Apple was out there. And the things that they solved were the products that they delivered. They solved for people having shoes, or they solved for people having whatever. And you just go through the list. So these are kids in 10th, 11th, 12th grade who fall into the same trap that we just talked about. Now, then we started asking some other questions. We started getting into the vertical questions that you described a little bit earlier. We didn't keep it horizontal. And then you started to surface up things like confidence, status, emotion, like things that people feel. And that's where you get into this human aspect of what our profession does and helping people solve problems. We've got to understand what is it that people are feeling, sensing, connected to, because if there's no feeling, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you've got a sheet hanging up in your dining room for 6 months, and you'll deal with it when you have to deal with it when the in-laws come over. So Absolutely. That was, again.
Oh, I can't imagine that happening, Mike. My in-laws coming over and their sheet, would not be good.
Yeah. So these are 10th, 11th, and 12th graders, and they're doing the same thing that a lot of our sales professionals will do in the marketplace. And we can do better by looking at the mysteries, like you were talking about, going into Law and Order and embracing that, and just being curious and asking questions, and then intentionally curious, not because someone said I need to ask 5 whys so I could get to the root of whatever. Like you should, but you should understand why you're going through that process. So, wow.
So can we give our viewers an assignment? Man. Can we give our viewers an assignment?
Sure.
Okay. So if we're in agreement that emotion is what energizes your deal.
Yep.
And what has to happen during discovery is a transformation process. But we can't have a transformation if we don't know how they felt about those issues before you walked in the door.
Yeah.
And we haven't identified how we want them to feel after we've walked out the door.
Right.
So here's your assignment. Make a list of everything that your product, service, technology, whatever it is, addresses for the people that you're selling to. They increase efficiency, they reduce cost, et cetera, et cetera. You make that list. You put that in the middle of the page, stack it up. On the left side of that, for each one of them, for the individual that you're going to meet with for a discovery meeting, how do they feel about that particular issue before you ever walk in the door?
Yep.
How do you want them to feel about it after you walk out the door? And so if you have those 2 portfolios of emotions, here's how they feel about what we address before we walk in the door. And then here's how I want them to feel as I walk out the door. Discovery is the transformation of before to after. But if we haven't identified those 2 portfolios, you can't possibly do it. And I got to tell you, emotion energizes deals. So if you understand those 2 endpoints, you can have that transformative process. And one of the questions that's so often missing with salespeople during discovery that really brings forward the emotion. So we talked about, we hear pain and we have to discern, is it a problem or an inconvenience?
Yep.
And after we hear about it, to ask this question, how does that issue impact you personally? As soon as you ask that question, the entire response back is emotional. How does this impact your team? Or how does this impact your users? Are you going to get the emotional response that helps you to understand their perception today? And then you identified ahead of time how you want them to feel afterwards. So then you chart the course during discovery to get there.
So Lee, we've got a diverse audience of people who will listen to this podcast. Some of them will be learning and development professionals. Some of them will be freelancers who are just starting to go out on their own. Some of them will be early business owners. So there's this diverse group of people. There are also a number of people who will listen to this. And we rebranded the podcast to Find My Catalyst, who say, sales is not what I want to do. I don't ever want to be associated with sales. And we're working on shifting the perspective of what that word means. And thinking about it more in the context of being able to help people solve problems, connecting the dots between problems that are known or unknown and solutions that are known or unknown. So if you're listening to this and you're saying, you know what, I don't go through discovery calls. We don't do all of these things. I don't have these conversations with my customers. Think about your internal customers that you have inside your organization. As a person who's leading a product team, you do have internal customers. You may not think of yourself as a salesperson. You are out there helping them solve problems. You can still go through the same exercise. And the power of the exercise is you'll be much more intentional in the way that you guide your customers, the questions that you ask, the responses that you give. So don't think about it as just general as prep for the discovery call. Let's put it in I'm putting it in the context of some of the other things you might be thinking about.
Yes.
You can even do this at home. Like, what are the problems I have inside what are the things that I want to have done inside the house, whether it's get the dishes from the table to the dishwasher or clean up rooms or whatever. How is the current state going? What's the desired state? And I'm just trying to draw some correlations back to it. Lee, the conversation has been absolutely awesome. You've got me amped up on a Thursday morning, and I've learned so much too. Like, I know that you've got a guard dog. I know that you've got a sheep in the house. I know that you potentially are going to have in-laws coming at some point in time.
Yes.
You also talked a bit about one of the challenges, an example around comp plan. So the person comes in and says, regional manager says, got a comp plan challenge. I got a comp plan problem. Can you help me? Mm-hmm. And based on kind of the way that you've worked with organizations, that they are impacted by the problem. They have people on their team who are impacted by the problem. They're impacted directly by the problem, but they're not necessarily the one who can actually fix. They might be able to influence things inside the organization and start to get into some of the other things that you've talked about relative to influence. Let's go back to comp plans. Like, Why do organizations struggle with comp plans?
Boy, do we have 6 hours? There's a lot of reasons. So let's start first. One of the, to me, most irresponsible studies that, and I see this all the time, is the percentage of salespeople who hit goal, who hit quota, whatever it is.
Sure.
Yeah. And the reason I say that's irresponsible is it's not like you're in the accounting world where there's a regimented way accounting is done.
Right.
Goals are just like, this seems like a good number. We'll give him $1 million. That's his goal for the year. And we don't, and there isn't a set logic approach to goal setting. And so that oftentimes correlates to income, right? And based on, so if the goal is arbitrary and my income happens to be tied to it, I got a problem.
Yep.
So what I do compensation work is I take them back to a school environment and I ask them, when they're setting a goal, would you match that with getting an A, a B, or a C on a report card?
Okay.
So if you say it's a C, that means when they achieve it, they've done the minimum to keep their job.
Yep.
If it's an A, means they've exceeded expectations. They've hit it out of the park.
Okay.
And again, the most common response when I ask about that is silence, because they haven't really thought about it. It's just very arbitrary how we set goals.
Well, I can tell you this as a person who's led sales teams in different size organizations and different capacities. I've never really thought about, deliberately said, hey, is this an A, B, or C level goal? And I've done a number of comp plans. Now, on my side, my preference is I don't, when I'm bringing people in, I don't want them to ever be satisfied with on-target earnings. I want them to blow through their number. Now, if everybody's blowing through their number, I've made some mistakes relative to how we've structured some things, and we need to make some adjustments. Mm-hmm. But it really like the idea of looking at this in the context of, is this they've already, by hitting the goal, it's so stretched, they've gone above and beyond, or by hitting the goal, they've actually just done the minimum commitment or the minimum necessary. Really good.
So when we talk about this A, B, and C, all three are fine for goal setting. It's just having the understanding internally and with the reps. So this is what it means if you hit a goal. This is like getting this on your report card. So I'm not looking to say, oh, no, you got to set it as an A or you have to set it as a C. Yeah. I just want them to have that logic approach because the rest of the process needs to be linear. Okay. So when we talk about compensation design, one of the mistakes that I see, fill in the blank for me, Mike, you're only as good as your blank sale.
Last. And that's how most compensation plans work. If you look at what is so important to a business, both looking at this year, next year, and future, if you ever try to sell, it's what's coming tomorrow. So I changed that expression to you're only as good as your next sale. See, if you're only as good as your last sale, you get the EKG effect. You know what the EKG effect is? I don't know what the EKG effect is. I have looked at my EKG, but what is the EKG effect?
Okay, so I'm down here and I start doing the right things, Oh, I got a deal. I get a commission check. I got some money. Okay, I can get lazy now. I don't have to do anything. Oh, my manager's kicking my butt. Oh, I got to make some more money. Okay, I got to start doing the right things again. Oh, I got a deal. I get lazy again. Oh, manager's on me again. Oh, got to start doing those things. So
That's
this is
absolutely awesome. And then it reinforces. Now the manager thinks, hey, this is what my job is. I'm going to go ahead and I just have to go around and start kicking people in the butt. And then all of a sudden the EKG meters go up. But
so when you look at most compensation plans, particularly think of these long sales cycles, when you give that commission check, that's for something they did right how long ago?
Oh, yeah.
So we're not reinforcing any behavior. So there's a concept that I work with a lot of companies to implement. I call it a sales behavioral objective program, an SBO.
Okay.
And we're not paying the salespeople more money. We're going to pull from this base salary, not the existing people, but newer people. And we're going to pull from the upside of the comp plan.
Yep.
And this is where the company has some ownership, where they say, we know what salespeople need to do to be successful here. We know what that is. And we know our model that if you look at different steps of the process, what the conversion ratios are.
Yep.
So what I want to do is I want to invest in those activities and behaviors that lead to sales.
Yep.
Because if this happens, I get that.
Yep.
So I don't want to just invest in yesterday. I want to invest in tomorrow. I don't want this. I want this.
Yep.
So I want them always thinking about that next deal. And so the way you can structure this plan is based on tenure. And I actually have an ebook on my website that you can download. It's at salesarchitects.com if you go to the resources section, and it lays out how to put this in practice. But if you look at the different steps, you say, okay, in Q1, you need to have this number of discovery meetings, this number of presentations, this number of proposals. And it's formulaic based on what you believe the conversion ratio is going to be. If those things are happening, we know the revenue is going to be there. And so, and I didn't say we're paying them more money. Remember, I said we're going to pull dollars from these two sides to fund this initiative.
Yep.
And some of you listening to this may say, I only pay for results. Well, you can't do anything about results, but there's a lot you can do about the activities and the behaviors that get those results. You can yell and scream all you want about the results. Doesn't change anything. So I want to invest in the activities and behaviors that get me those results.
I think this is a conversation that we could go really deep on. Like you said, if we 6 hours, because so I'm going to leave an open invitation to you to come back on and talk about this, because I am firmly in, although you're shifting my thinking, firmly in the results camp. But the reason I'm firmly in the results camp is because of the types of businesses I've worked in and work with. So many of these are early stage. So the numbers end up coming from arbitrary numbers, but let's have that conversation.
Would love to
at another time.
And the SPO, by the way, the SPO, I'm not saying it's a universal fit.
Sure.
So if you're very much in a transactional sale, very short sales cycle, it may not fit there.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at long, complex sales cycles, we want to drive the activity and behavior of the salespeople along the way so that we have consistent growth in the pipeline and, of course, results on the back end. I'm not saying I'm not an advocate for paying on results. I am.
Yeah. And I want to
drive what gets me the results.
Well, and I was one of those guys who people would give me a hard time, like as an individual contributor, W-2 way back. It was, I had people who would basically say, what do? You take the first 10 months off of the year off for the first 10 months of the year off. And then all of a sudden you come in, not like I'm, Reggie Jackson and coming in as Mr. October. And then now some are moving into Mr. November, but I would. And it wasn't because I took that whole period off. It was because I was doing the work, going through and delivering over and over and over again. And even in those complex sales, it's a series of transactions that are happening. You're moving from next step to next step, and you're working through project managing that work. Now, some years it'd be great. Some years it wouldn't. It'd be some years we'd add on something into the house, or we'd go on an amazing trip. And then other years where, hey, we might be eating ramen for the first couple of months of the year, but there's this kind of ebb and flow.
Sure.
Yeah. There's so many, one of the cool things about this profession that we're in and the work that we all do, there are so many different ways that we can solve a problem. There's right fit for your problem, right fit of solution for the problem that you're looking to solve, given all of the different characters. I'm going to pull it back to the discovery piece and not being stuck on one person, the various characters that are all part of the mystery that are playing a role. And you've got to think about what is the makeup of the team. And this is why I get scared when people, not specifically around this, I get scared when people read a book and say, I'm going to go ahead and insert this playbook. And I can tell you, as a lifelong Jets fan.
Oh my gosh.
Thank you. As a lifelong Jets fan, it's not about the playbook. It's about the people and the playbook.
You're a rarity, Mike, because you referenced Reggie Jackson. So I'm guessing you're a Yankees fan. I'm
not a huge baseball fan, but as I've moved around, I've adopted different teams. So
because usually it's Yankees, Giants.
Yes, Yankees.
Right. Usually it's Yankees, Giants, Mets, Jets.
Yeah. Well, and I can't stand the Rangers. I am like lifelong Islander fan.
So of course,
I'm weird in that. So we lived on the island. So we went to Jets games at Shea and Islander games in the Coliseum, and now we enjoy the sun and being out here in Arizona. So there's
Thank you, Mike. As I sit here in Minneapolis where it's sub-zero.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We actually had risk of snow last night. There was some, at the higher elevations in Phoenix, there was a chance for snow. So some people were a little bit worried.
I find that hard to believe because I was speaking down there 2 weeks ago and it was 80 degrees. So,
well, and that's the thing. This time of year, it just ebbs and flows. So sometimes you're on the golf course and it's warm, and sometimes you gotta bundle up. Lee, this has been an awesome conversation. I can't wait to have you back on at some point to talk about comp plans and goals and objectives and really get into the SBO model that you discussed. We will include links in the show notes so people will be able to go to the links that Lee talked about earlier. And where would you like to send people? Where can people find out more about what you're working on? What's the call to action?
Thank you. So if you think about the conversation like you and I have had today, it was irrespective of a product, right? We were talking about how you sell, which ties to my book, Sell Different. And if you go to selldifferentbook.com, you can download the first chapter. You did a read, or if you like audiobooks, the first chapters, there's an audiobook. And if you purchase the book and it's available in Amazon and all the bookstores and all that stuff, come back to that website, selldifferentbook.com, and sign up for the video series. Every week for a year, you'll get a link to a video that'll help you implement what you've read. Doesn't have anything to do with what you're selling. It's all about how you're selling.
Get the book. The book is fascinating. We will include the links in the show notes. Lee, again, awesome conversation. If you know of someone who would gain value from listening to this, appreciate the discussion, please share it with them. Let Lee and I know both via LinkedIn and Twitter. That's where I tend to be a bit more active. Let us know via LinkedIn and Twitter. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking differently about your process?